Some places, they just don't forget. It's like the memories get stuck in the walls, in the dust, even in the air you breathe. Blackwood Mill was exactly that kind of place. It stood on the edge of Oakhaven, a hulking shadow against the often gray sky. For over a century, its dark, windowless eyes had watched the town, a silent sentinel guarding secrets too chilling to tell. The wind always seemed to whisper around its crumbling stone, carrying tales that made your skin prickle, even on a warm day. It wasn't just old, it felt ancient, like it had grown out of the earth itself, a monument to forgotten times and perhaps forgotten people. The townsfolk of Oakhaven mostly pretended Blackwood Mill didn't exist. They'd hurry past its overgrown grounds, their eyes fixed straight ahead. But you could feel it, you really could. It was like a giant beast, asleep but not quite. The air around it was heavy, thick with the scent of damp wood, rusting metal, and something else. Something you couldn't quite name, but knew wasn't right. Children dared each other to touch its padlocked gates, but few ever did. There was an understanding, an unspoken agreement, that the mill was best left undisturbed, its secrets locked away with the ghosts of its past. People said the mill wasn't just empty, it was waiting. Waiting for what? No one ever said out loud. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they were too scared to even think about it. The silence that surrounded Blackwood Mill was a special kind of silence. It wasn't peaceful. Oh no. It was the kind of silence that hums with unspoken words, with the echoes of footsteps that faded long ago, and with the faint, almost inaudible sigh of something or someone still lingering within its decaying heart. It was alive, in its own creepy way. The very structure of the mill seemed to breathe. Old wooden beams groaned under the weight of years, and loose shutters banged in the wind like frantic hands trying to escape. The shadows that clung to its corners were deeper, darker than ordinary shadows. They twisted and writhed, playing tricks on your eyes. It was a place where your imagination could run wild, painting terrifying pictures in the gloom. Blackwood Mill didn't just hold memories, it seemed to feed on them, growing more ominous with each passing year. Its reputation as a place of unease firmly cemented in the town's collective fear. My name is Alex, and I'd just moved to Oakhaven. The big city, with its constant noise and endless crowds, had finally gotten to me. I needed peace. I needed quiet. I craved a place where the loudest sound was the chirping of crickets at night. Oakhaven seemed perfect, a tiny dot on the map, surrounded by sleepy woods and rolling hills. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and life moved at a snail's pace. Or so I thought. I was looking for a fresh start, a way to escape the shadows of my old life, not knowing I was about to walk into a whole new kind of darkness. The moment I saw Blackwood Mill, I was hooked. It was visible from the window of my small rented cottage, looming in the distance like a forgotten nightmare. While the other townsfolk avoided it, I found myself drawn to its mysterious presence. It was a stark contrast to the otherwise quaint and peaceful atmosphere of Oakhaven. It whispered of stories, of history, of things left unsaid. My parents always said I had too much curiosity for my own good, and they were probably right. The mill was a puzzle, a dark, intriguing puzzle, and I couldn't resist the urge to get a closer look, to understand its silent story. The local librarian, a kindly old woman named Mrs. Gable, tried to warn me. "Best leave the mill be, dear," she'd said, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes darting around as if the mill itself might overhear. Some doors are best left unopened. The other townsfolk would clam up whenever I mentioned it, their faces clouding over. They spoke in hushed tones of strange lights seen flickering in its empty windows, of eerie sounds drifting from it on still nights, and of people who had ventured too close and never been quite the same again. These warnings, of course, only fueled my fascination further. One afternoon, unable to resist any longer, I decided to explore the perimeter of the mill. The grounds were wild, choked with thorny bushes and tangled weeds that clawed at my jeans. As I pushed aside a curtain of overgrown ivy clinging to a crumbling section of the outer wall, I saw it. Hidden from casual view was a small, weathered wooden sign, barely legible. The paint was peeling and the wood was splintered, but the crudely carved letters were unmistakable. They spelled out a simple, chilling message. "He waits." A shiver, cold and sharp, ran down my spine. Who was he, and what was he waiting for? The warning on the sign should have sent me running. It screamed danger in big, bold, invisible letters. But that pesky curiosity, the one my parents always warned me about, was like an itch I couldn't scratch. He waits, I thought. Well, maybe I wanted to see who he was. With my heart thumping like a drum solo against my ribs, I found a loose board in one of the boarded-up doorways. It creaked ominously as I pulled it aside, just enough to squeeze through. The air that rushed out from inside the mill was cold, stale, and carried a faint, musty odor like ancient paper and something else. Something metallic. Inside, it was darker than I expected. Dust motes danced in the thin slivers of light that pierced through cracks in the boarded windows. Cobwebs, thick as cotton candy, draped over everything, shimmering faintly. Huge, silent machines loomed like sleeping iron giants, their gears and levers coated in a thick layer of rust. The silence was almost deafening at first, a heavy blanket smothering all sound. Then I heard it, faintly, so faintly I almost thought I'd imagined it, a melody. A sad, haunting little tune, played on what sounded like an old music box, or perhaps a distant, ghostly piano. It seemed to be coming from deeper within the mill. Every instinct told me to turn back, to get out of there and never return. But the melody, it was strangely hypnotic. It was melancholic, yes, but also inviting. It tugged at me, pulling me further into the decaying heart of Blackwood Mill. I stepped carefully over fallen beams and around piles of debris, my sneakers crunching softly on the gritty floor. The feeling of being watched was intense now. It wasn't like someone was hiding in the shadows, ready to jump out. It was more like the mill itself had eyes, and they were all fixed on me, following my every move. The air grew colder with each step I took. The melody grew a little stronger, a little clearer as I moved towards what looked like a central corridor. It was a simple tune, yet it filled me with an unexplainable sadness and a growing sense of dread. What kind of place had music like this as its soundtrack? The shadows seemed to deepen around me, and I could hear the scurrying of unseen creatures in the walls. Or was it something else? My breath hitched in my throat. The rational part of my brain was screaming, but the part that had led me here, the curious part, kept pushing me forward, deeper into the mill's embrace, towards the source of that eerie, beckoning sound. The corridor led me to a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. The melody was definitely coming from beyond it. Pushing it open with a loud creak that echoed through the silence, I found myself in a surprisingly large circular room. Dust lay thick on everything, but this room felt different from the rest of the mill. It felt important. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and the haunting music was much clearer here, though still soft and mournful, as if played by invisible hands. It seemed to swirl around me, wrapping me in its sorrowful embrace. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, a sure sign that I was not alone. And then I saw it, hanging on the far wall, the centerpiece of the room. It was an enormous tapestry, ancient and faded, yet incredibly detailed. It depicted Blackwood Mill in what must have been its glory days, bustling with workers, its machinery turning. But as I stepped closer, a knot of ice formed in my stomach. The faces of the workers? They were disturbingly lifelike. Their eyes, woven with incredible skill, seemed to follow me as I moved. They looked sad, trapped. I could almost feel their despair, their silent screams, reaching out from the threads. This wasn't just art, it felt like a prison. My gaze drifted across the tapestry, taking in the unsettling details. I recognized some of the faces from old photographs I'd seen in Mrs. Gable's town history books, people who had reportedly vanished from Oakhaven decades ago, their disappearances attributed to accidents at the mill or simply running away. But here they were, immortalized in thread. Then, my blood ran cold. I noticed something utterly horrifying. Strands of what looked like real human hair were woven into the fabric, giving the figures a terrifyingly real texture. And in one corner, an unfinished section of the tapestry was taking shape. My eyes focused on the newest threads being woven. The colors, they were familiar, chillingly familiar, the dark brown of my own hair. A new face was beginning to form, still indistinct, but I knew, with a certainty that froze me to the spot, whose face it would become. Mine. He waits, the sign had said. Was this what he waited for? New additions to his ghastly collection? A scream tore from my throat. I didn't wait. I turned and fled, bursting out of that room, out of the corridor, out of the mill, and into the fading daylight, gasping for breath. I never went back. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind blows just right, I think I can hear that faint, haunting melody drifting from Blackwood Mill, and I wonder, is he still waiting, for me, or for someone else?